Okay, so next up, let's take... Hey everybody, Model Man Tom here. So we've taken a look at the case. Let's take a look at the motherboard next. In this case, this is made by Asus. There's lots of motherboard manufacturers out there. I've gone through several myself. This is probably my second or third Asus. I've had 3 or 4 Intel boards, Gigabit in there somewhere, and probably a few boards that are even out of business now, manufacturers. There's piles out there. They're all going to be relatively the same here or there, low end, high end. You can get a good basic motherboard for probably in the $50 range, if not slightly less, or you can go up to several hundreds of dollars, probably $500 or $600 is my bet. This one was kind of middle-ish low range, around $200, and there are a couple reasons why I chose this one, and we'll go over that when I get to it. It's a nice box, fairly standard. For storage, I already put the processor in here, but we'll take a look at that in its own video. You get a driver disc, a couple accessories. Usually when you get a motherboard, they'll give you a few cables as well. They'll always give you a back port because this is custom to the individual motherboard. Looks like a few header pins right there. I've already gone through the manual and read it all. This is, usually I'm not really a big fan of looking at the directions, but really with the motherboard, it's usually going to be a fairly expensive piece of equipment that you don't want to screw up with. Each one is going to have its own little bits of information that you need. So this is really the first step to building a computer, is going through your motherboard user guide. And underneath here, we have the goods. Let's see. Excuse me. You want to be very careful from here on out in how you handle this. And step 1 to handling a motherboard is never pick it up by any of the fans or connectors inside here. Step 2 for handling a motherboard is whenever you place it down anywhere, at the very least, put it on its own bag. This is an anti-static bag, so that's going to help protect you from doing any accidental damage at all. So you've probably all seen motherboards, but you may never really taken a very close look at what's going on here. There are a few components here that are common to all of them. There's a few components that don't exist anymore. For instance, there's no floppy drive controller on this board. And now that I'm looking at it, there's also no IDE port, which is the old format for hard drives. We've got SATA drives right here, but IDE was about 40 pins, just about as big as this power connector here, but a lot thinner. It was more this style. And it doesn't exist anymore. That does throw a wrench into my plans. The idea that I had was to take one of my old DVD drives and simply slot that in here, and that is an IDE drive. So not having an IDE port to plug the IDE drive into, I'm kind of SOL on that one. So it looks like I'm going to have to buy a SATA DVD drive of some sort. I may just upgrade the Blu-ray at this point. We'll see about that decision. That throws a second monkey wrench into the plans here. So as you can see, let's take a look at the SATA ports here. Let's put them in some light. So this is the new hard drive interface right here. Nice, tight, small, convenient. My plan was to put 8 hard drives into this machine. There are 8 slots. That means there are no slots for the DVD drive that I am going to need because everything runs off of some kind of disk. That's a problem. However, I think I have a solution for that problem. These here are internal IDE slots. Over here on the back port, this gets exposed to the outside world. There are 2 eSATA ports. That's external SATA. So what I may do is a little bit of cheating. I will get an internal DVD drive and simply hook up an external cord to it and run that through the case and outside and back to plug into there. I think that should work. Barely. That's definitely a little bit of a trick that I've got going on. And while we're over here, let's take a look at what we've got. We've got a whole pile of USB ports, 2, 4, 6, 8 of them. Looks like we got an onboard FireWire. That's probably a 1394A. 1394B is the faster version, and Macintoshes are the only ones that have that standard. Looks like we've got a split keyboard mouse connector. RJ45 for the Ethernet. In this case it's 10, 100, 1000 gigabit. And then all of the audio connectors are right here. So I think there's 7-channel sound on this motherboard. So if I wanted, I could really set up a really kick-ass musical system with it. That's the easy stuff. Let's take a look inside here now. So up here we've got 6 slots for the RAM. This is DDR3 in this case. It's the latest generation of RAM. And usually both of these ends here clip in. So you flip those back at each end, slot your memory in, and then those clip down. In this case, this is a really tight fit here, so what ASUS did was to simply make these fixed. Or actually, I think they lift up maybe? I'm not going to force the issue. But essentially one end you don't have to mess as much with as the other, which will make it a little bit of a convenience. Over here we'll take a look at the obvious thing. This is the motherboard, or the CPU slot rather. This is a cap protecting all the magic that happens underneath, and this is called a ZIF socket, zero insertion force. So once you put the CPU in here, you simply pull this lever down and lock that baby in. It'll give the exact amount of pressure that it needs. Then there are 4 holes here going around the edges, and that deals with the CPU fan that's going to go on top. Moving around here, under this whole big heat sink, we've got the chipset. This is the brains of the operation that tells the motherboard what it actually does. Probably got the South Bridge set under here. There used to be a North Bridge and South Bridge. These go to the CPU, and basically they act as, they're called buses, but essentially what they're doing is funneling information. So this is probably taking the information from any cards that you've got going here, it funnels through here and then goes up to your CPU and back again. So it's like a mini CPU, but a little different with slightly different functions. Over here we've got the PCI slots. We've got 2 PCI X, which is for graphics cards. We've got 1 standard PCI slot for any old style sound cards or anything else you might want to throw in there, RAID controller and so on. And I guess what we've got is actually 3 PCI slots. These are 16s and this is a 4. What that means is just basically the graphics speed. These are specifically for the graphics card only. This is more new generation, faster. This is older generation, slower, is all that comes down to. And these 2 little slots here are also for the graphics card, but I've never seen a use for them yet. But I know there is one for it. What else? We've got, one thing you'll notice if you look at a motherboard really close is that all over the place there's going to be silk screened information. So we've got USB headers here. We've got there's 2 different versions of SATA speeds. So here we've got SATA 3 gig of speed, and here we've got SATA 6 gig speed. CHA fan 3 and 2 for fans, chassis fans. DIMM A2, A1, B2, B1, C2, C1, all over the place. There's going to be a lot of little writing, so you'll never really get lost too much, if ever at all. That's really all there is to looking at this. A lot of this here, like I said, is just heat sinks, which kind of makes it look fancy, and I'm sure all the shiny stuff definitely makes this look a lot more complicated than it is. Don't get me wrong, this is a complicated piece of engineering here. Let's take a look at the back real quick. It's like a miniature city at night. Rows and rows of information traveling around all over the place. It's truly a modern marvel. So another thing, apart from the holes for the CPU fan here, you'll also see that there's holes placed variously around the case. We got one here, there, here, a couple there, here, and then 3 more down there. Those are what will allow us to attach the motherboard to the chassis of the fan, of the case. And when we get to installing that, we'll do that. I'll do a special video coming up on just installing the CPU. Sorry about the focus. This camera really drives me nuts. And right now I'm going to keep this boxed until I absolutely have to, because this is truly a work of wonder. When you do get a CPU, the way you can tell that it is what it's supposed to be is that engraved on the side, or on the top rather, you'll have all the basic information. So in this case it's Intel i7-950, Intel Core i7, made in Costa Rica, 3.6 gigahertz, and that is pretty much that. So if you ever go to buy a CPU and you're not sure, or you don't believe the vendor that you buy it from, simply take a look at this and you'll know exactly what you got. So next up, we'll install the CPU and the CPU fan, and then we'll drop this motherboard into the case. See ya.